Hello again and welcome to another edition of Tango Practica Tips. Today we'll be looking at one of my favorite figures to introduce to novice dancers, which is the Ocho. Quite frankly, it's my favorite way of teaching both the men and the women how to invite the cross and how to actually execute it. So if you already know how to do the cross, then you'll also learn a new movement that you may not be aware of that you'll encounter quite frequently in milongas. And if you don't know how to do the cross, well, I'll hope to teach you how to do it or how to invite it without picking up on a lot of the bad habits that can come with other ways of teaching it. Ocho means cut A, so it is a close embrace version of a forward ocho. But just because it's used a lot by close embrace dancers doesn't mean that it can't be used by open dancers. In fact, open or salon dancers use it quite often. In my experience, it is much better, a lot more efficient, that is, to teach both the men and the women to learn the cross through the Ocho than it is to learn the cross from, say, the account basic. There's a built-in musicality to it, so it's an easy way for students to get the musicality into their bodies. It also teaches them how to keep connected through things that, like turns, because Ocho is pretty much a small turn. It also, most importantly, of course, teaches how to do the cross. Now, the cross is not one of those natural things for women to do. So when you have an experienced man take a woman and lead her through some tango figures, she'll be able to do back steps, forward steps. She can even do Traspies pretty easily without any instruction. She'll be able to do forward ochos. However, going into the cross is something that she needs to be taught. Same with backwards ochos and same with milanese, the pattern for milanese. Okay? So how we approach the cross and how we expose it to students, I think, is an important way of letting them learn important techniques, learning to learn connection, and of course, learning some musicality. It would be a fair question to ask, if I'm teaching a curriculum to new students, at what point would I introduce this? Now, the Ocho I would teach in the second class. In the first class, we're learning basic things like walking. We're going to be learning Traspie, so that we'll also learn some musicality. And of course, we'll also be learning the simple turn based off of using this Traspie, or this, or some may call it a rebote. But this approach, I find, prepares the students really well for learning their Ocho next, which is, like I said, basically a version of a turn. So the Ocho looks like this. So we're going to start with our Traspie. Actually, let's start with our two steps, what we call our two for nothing steps, and then we're going to go to our Traspie, and we'll break it down for you. So the movement itself looks like this. We're going 1, 2, back and forth, side, and cross. Okay, so one more time. 1, 2, 3, and okay. So they already have some built-in rhythms in that, and they're really just expanding on their use of the Traspie. So to break it down more, what he's basically doing is asking me from this step here to come forward to the closed side. And to do this, he's using his Contrabody to open this space for me. And my job as the follower is to make sure that I'm staying in front of him. So his chest tells me where to go. Okay? And from here, his chest is here. He's asking me now to step sideways, but he hasn't asked me to go this way. Right? I'm still trying to align my chest with his, and then he's asking me to go back where I came from. Good. Why don't we do it from the other side so you can see what's happening? So from this side, it's 1, 2, 1, and 2. And you see here, I'm showing you a square. He opens me to the side. And again, we're all squared up here. And he's asking me to come back here. And this is what I'm following. I have to know from the cross that my job as a cross is to align with him. Again, I'm trying to align my foot with where he is. And I can be in this position, or I can unwind and do this, depending on, you know, what the music is and what I think his intentions are next. Okay, so one more time, it's beat, 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 and beat, beat, and beat. So, for the women, really all you gotta remember is stay in front of them, stay in front of them. When you cross, you have this rotation, something we've talked about, this rotation of the femur to bring that leg in so that the hips, foot, upper body are aligned. Okay? And as I mentioned in the last video, this gets placed, this back leg, the right leg comes up to meet the front leg. The men, really the only thing you want to watch out for is making sure that when you take that first step backwards, that you're not just abandoning her. Okay, so if you watch when Sean takes this back step, then he leaves his upper body with me as he takes that back step. Okay? If he did it the other way, in other words, if he kind of fell back on himself, it would kind of look like this. And you can see the slant in his body and falling into the step, which is not good. So, gentlemen, just because you're going backwards doesn't mean that you leave her behind. Okay, you stay connected with the upper body. You have your foot extension, that's something we've talked about. You learn how to extend the foot without moving our bodies. When you feel her coming back, then you know it's safe. And that opening, even just that opening of that hip, can you do that again? Will create that space for me to come forward. But it's coming forward because, you know, he's just turning. It's not, you know, it's not that big of a deal. He's just stepping backwards, asking me to step again. We're stepping together here, and we're really going back to the cross. Okay? I do also want to talk about the difference between a Traspie and a rock step. So what we're doing is more of a Traspie, and it comes, whoops, let's do this way. I kind of think about it as a difference in the quality of the movement. So a Traspie, he's kind of putting the brakes on. Back and then here. Now, some people will say that because you're going back and going back in the opposite direction, that is a rebound. But I think that is more of a difference in quality. It's like of a movement, sort of like the difference between a gancho and a leg wrap. Okay, so this Traspie, when he's doing it, he's stopping it, putting on the brakes. A rock step has a more spring to it. It is more this rocking movement here. However, what I have found in experience is that if I start teaching people with that, it makes it harder for them to pick up the Traspie part where we just want to break. There's a difference in quality. As for the teachers, I would say, instead of doing this rocking step, do this Traspie first, because learning to do this and controlling that weight is going to be much easier for them later when they decide to just give a little bit more weight for this, you know, more of a bouncy rocking movement. If you do it the other way around, where it's the bouncing movement first, then it's harder for them to learn how to stop that weight shift. How I usually teach this to begin with is what I'll call monkey see, monkey do. And that is, we have the men on one side of the class, the ladies on the other, and each will be just imitating what their respective teacher is actually doing. We'll do this a few times, and then we'll finally put them together. As always, whenever you have two people starting a figure together for the first time, it's not uncommon for problems to arise. And the same is true there, as you can tell. But these are pretty easy problems to fix. For the women, they generally fall into three different problems. One is, after their first rock step back, they may not bring this step forward, the right leg forward. In other words, what they might do is step back, change weight, and go forward with this foot instead. what ends up happening is they end up too far away from the partner. Okay? Well, this is one of the reasons I teach Traspie, because I want people to understand the difference between the weight extension and or the weight extension and where the weight actually is on their supporting leg. So if we remind people that this is basically a version of the Traspie, so that they're not collecting here and going to the next step, but just having this foot extension and then going forward again, that usually solves that problem, and then they continue to connect with their partner. The second issue tends to be with the hips, and again, it's just controlling how to pivot the hips instead of pivoting away from the partner, pivoting toward the partner. And the trick to that is, of course, pivoting off of this right leg and also turning this femur, right, all the way up here toward the man, so that when we do the cross, we're again connecting to where the man is. Placing that foot, specifically the toe, toward the man's chest. And that will bring the rest of her together so that everything's realigned. So the third problem that can occur, and quite frankly, this happens no matter how you teach a cross, is that the woman might not be able to feel the space here, or may be uncomfortable, because like I said, it's not something that they would normally do in real life, right? Her tendency, her natural tendency would want to go to the back. So we need to make sure that she can feel that space in front for her cross. And there are two things that we can do to ensure that. One is, of course, is to create the space. The other is to make sure that the man is correctly leading the movement. So we have this upper body movement to go from side to the cross. Now let's look at how Sean creates the space for that cross.
After Sean takes his side step, watch how he places his right foot just behind his left foot as he invites the cross. As his foot goes back, my foot comes forward to match the space. He is both creating space and inviting me forward.
So what Sean is doing is like this. Forward and back, side, together. You'll also notice that my hip is going down. And this also gets all of the weight down so that we can have a nice strong push off for the next step. The Ocho Cortado is also very forgiving regarding where the man's weight is or what his distribution is. As long as she follows that weight shift, it's fine. Or even if she goes a little bit further, she'll still be able to do the cross and they can continue dancing. Okay? So on the side step, I prefer to teach it so that the weight is split in half, just so that we're able to control that. But it's also fine to just touch and go, or have more of the weight come over that side step, and then bring it to the cross. The nice thing about this movement, this is one of the reasons I also like to teach it, is that it's right now we're doing it stationary, but for a dancer, a novice dancer, the milonga, one of his issues is going to be navigation. So this is a figure that you can do in place. And in this case, he wants to go down a line of dance. He can do it in place and actually turn it so that I'm facing the opposite direction. And all that is where he places that back foot. You want to do that again? So from here, if you watch Sean's back foot where he places it, he opens up that hip and places it behind him so that I will end up being against the line of dance. Okay? The other thing too, in addition to just doing it in place, is that you can also use it to travel down the line of dance. And again, all it takes is where you place that back foot, where you're seeing the space and just going for it. That's it for today's video. There may be a lot of different other ways of teaching the cross. This is how I prefer to teach it. And it is quite clear to me after years of teaching this dance how people are taught the cross. Whether they're man or woman, I see the same things over and over again. And I find that using the Ocho Cortado to teach how to lead the cross or how to follow cross produces way, way less problems than, say, learning using the 8-count basic. Next week will be our last video in this mini-series about the cross, and we'll look specifically at the problems that many men face when they lead the cross from something other than the Ocho Cortado. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.